into getting to hear a little bit about, what WARM is and what do you guys do, and maybe we could start there and just talk a little bit about the mission and purpose of WARM.
Yeah, absolutely. So WARM was founded in 1996 after Hurricanes Bertha and Fran had come through the Wilmington area. Founded by the United Methodist Church, UMCOR, which is the United Methodist Committee on Relief. They came into the area after those storms, got local volunteers and all involved to do what was storm recovery. But in the midst of the storm recovery, they uncovered a social disaster, and that is substandard housing. And so when the funding ran out for the storm repairs, the local pastors and other folks that had gotten involved said, we can't stop. We found this greater problem that we need to.
A systemic problem.
Exactly. So for the majority of our 28 years, that's what the focus has been, is that substandard housing issue. Obviously with Hurricane Matthew, with Hurricane Florence, all the minor named storms that have come through, and the no-name storm that have come through the area since then, we jump back into storm recovery as we need to. But for it's mainly that health and safety related home repairs.
Got it.
And so we address all the major systems, plumbing, electrical, HVAC, and then go in and do these other items as well. And so we'll address a tripping hazard, and so we'll take out all their flooring or their carpeting, repair the floor, and then come back in with a hard surface floor. By doing that, you take out not only the tripping hazard, but also the breathing hazard that old carpet is as well. And we do, I think I left out roofs a while ago, we do roofing as well. A lot of wheelchair ramps. We get a lot of requests for wheelchair ramps to be done. ADA toilets in the bathroom, grab bars, smoke detectors, a lot of flooring throughout the house. I have great partnerships and great support from within the community. What started as the Wilmington district of the Methodist Church, which was 5 counties, Bladen and Columbus, as well as Brunswick, Pender, and New Hanover. As an all-volunteer organization, they quickly realized that 5 counties was really too much to handle. So for the majority of our time, we were in Brunswick and New Hanover and Pender. And then in the last 4 years, really during the pandemic, we reached out and expanded again, and so we went from the 3 counties, and when I started in 2018, we had 9 employees in 3 counties, and then now we have 36 employees. We're in 7 counties, and have moved all around. And so we added not only Bladen and Columbus back into the fold, but also picked up Duplin and Onslow. And so now we go from Brunswick all the way to Onslow on the coast, and then Duplin, Bladen, and Columbus just inland.
Unbelievable.
So, yeah.
And so this started as more of from a church that. Did you guys get FEMA funding, or do you know
the majority of the funding initially came through the Methodist Church.
Through the church.
Yeah, so they have a disaster relief arm.
Got it.
And that's what they came, and the funding came through that. Eventually that money ran out. But so then it was started with local fundraising to local churches, local businesses, individuals, and that's been the support that we've had. Eventually, right around the time that JC, our previous executive director, came on board in 2009, they got connected to North Carolina Housing and Finance Agency, and so there's a couple of large grants that we get from them, basically on an annual basis to do the work that we're doing. So.
Yeah. Man, so it's almost 30 years, almost
28 years.
28 years. Yeah. Now you've got 36 employees, and how many? Do you know over the 30 years how many people or how many homes you guys have impacted?
We have served. We just crossed the 2,300 threshold.
That's amazing.
So I think I was looking at it today. I think it's 2,304
Unbelievable.
homes. Yeah,
that's so cool.
Yeah.
And so what are some of the requirements that these folks have to, have for you guys to go in and do some of the work?
Yeah, so basic requirements, obviously, have to be within the service area, have to own their home and have owned their home for 3 years.
Okay.
And then there's an income requirement as well. And those come from, those are HUD numbers based on the county that they're in and the size of their family. And so we operate One of our grants is set at 50% or below of AMI, which is the area median income.
Okay.
The other one goes up to 80% of AMI and below. And so those two grants have different amounts. One allows us to do up to, it's actually going up next year, will allow us to do up to $15,000 worth of repairs on a home.
Awesome.
And then the larger one is also going up, and it will allow us to do up to $70,000 of repairs.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
that's a pretty big number.
A big jump. Yes, that was going from 40 to 70, and the other one's going from 12 to 15.
And what would be like the majority of the type of work you guys do?
We do a lot of wheelchair ramps.
Okay.
That's probably the single largest request that we get is for wheelchair ramps.
Got it.
And sometimes we'll get a request from a family. Mom or dad's in the hospital and they're getting out, this week or whenever, only if they have a wheelchair ramp. So we might get that call on Monday.
Yeah, exactly.
Unfortunately, we don't work that fast. We can't get it done for you on Friday. But that is something that I'm hoping that we can establish. I'm calling it a rapid ramp program, where we would have a supply of metal wheelchair ramps that we would have on hand, that if we were to get that call on Monday, we could go out in a couple hours, install a metal wheelchair ramp, then work through the process, get you qualified for a grant that would then fund us being able to go back and build a wooden ramp. That's a more permanent structure. We could reclaim the metal ramp and then start the process over again with somebody else. And so that's something that we're working towards.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's a pretty that's a pretty entrepreneurial way to look at providing services to the community. I mean, it's like, we'll take some of the risk to help you get out, and then we'll kind of figure it out on the back end.
Right.
I mean, that's how a lot of businesses start. It's like, we'll give it a shot, and then we'll figure it out after we get started a little bit.
But really, that's kind of built into the culture of Warm, which is in some ways different than a lot of nonprofits.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about the culture at Warm.
So the way your typical funding structure for a nonprofit goes, kind of the golden rule is whoever has the gold makes the rules. So, a lot of times we have to, kind of bend or shift a little bit based on the funders that are out there and what they're coming in with.
Yeah.
A lot of them don't necessarily lean into that entrepreneurial spirit. They're really focused on, what are those tried and true methods of things that have worked. But we have been in a place and have a track record of success that we are able to not take risks. I don't want to make it sound that way, but we're able to try some things, and able to do some things a little bit differently. Again, with support that we have from the community, from individuals, from businesses, from churches. There's outside of sort of the typical grant funding that we get, we have an opportunity to do something a little bit different, think a little bit differently, but really coming at it with that entrepreneurial spirit of you can't be afraid to fail. If you want to succeed. Sometimes things aren't going to go quite right, but if you've given it good thought and you've moved forward in that path, even if something doesn't work out, that's not a failure. That's a learning opportunity.
That's right.
And so then you take that mistake or whatever you want to call it, you take that opportunity and let's tweak it and let's come over here and let's try this again. Yep. And then so we've found ourselves in that situation a couple of times, and we go, what? Did we make a bad decision? No. Because we thought about it, we strategized about it, we moved forward with this. Did it work out? No, not exactly. Is it a failure? No, because we're going to learn from that. We're going to go back and rethink, kind of what we can do moving forward. Yeah.
Someone smarter than I told me once, he said, you can't fix an indecision, but you can fix maybe a bad decision, right? We're basically saying if you just sit there and get into analysis paralysis and don't do anything, that's worse than at least trying to come up with at least a plan and trying to execute it. And if it doesn't work out, then you pivot and go on to the next, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So with that, so grant money comes with some strings attached, right? Compared to just, maybe some of the general funding that you're raising in the community. And I think it'd be interesting to talk a little bit about that so people understand, grant money and having some type of restricted funds that are allocated towards a specific cause or purpose versus, hey, this is general money that we have raised and we can maybe be a little bit more flexible, entrepreneurial, or a little bit more, try things out. So tell us how you manage that balance of.
Yeah, so a lot of our those two large grants that I mentioned, so those are specifically for rebuilds.
Right.
And so that means that's gonna purchase materials that we need. It's gonna pay for contractors. It's gonna pay for staff that are on site.
Yep.
And some of them, most of the grants we get will have some level of administrative fees added to it. Generally not enough, but there's some there. Yeah. Because there's a lot of work that goes into a rebuild that isn't pounding a nail, from getting a homeowner qualified in the application process to the back end of billing and kind of walking through all of that. And
Absolutely.
so all of those things have to get factored in. So that, those are going directly to a rebuild. You may get a grant for a particular purpose to purchase a truck or purchase trailers or purchase tools, and those things have to be spent on those items.
Yeah.
It's getting more and more difficult to find a grantor these days that will pay for operational expenses.
Right.
So which are those general support items that are paying for office staff, and again, that support, as we view it, anybody that you're paying on my staff is supporting a rebuild and
Absolutely.
supporting the community, because everybody's role is important, and everybody's role goes to affect what happens out in the field.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the easy money to spend. It's the hard money to get.
Right. Exactly.
But
that's such a good one. And then like some of the reporting requirements that come along with those types of grants is, hey, here's the proof of what we actually spent the money on, and then getting audits done and stuff like that.
Yeah. So we get audit done every year. Again, every grant has its own reporting requirements and all as well. One of the grants that we have to supply them with invoices, with receipts, and with a bank statement that shows that the money actually came out of the account that we had. So you're like triple checking what we're doing. Whereas a for-profit company, you show them an invoice, you show them a bill, you're good to go.
Yeah, exactly.
So you've got this like double standard of checking up on a nonprofit, where it doesn't exist in the rest of the world. I don't know. It's one of the most frustrating things that nonprofits in general are set up to serve the community and help the community, and yet they're somehow held to a higher standard, a more difficult standard of proof than even a for-profit company is.
Yeah.
I guess you view a for-profit company as, well, their goal is to make money, and so the misnomer of nonprofit, in that as a nonprofit you can't make money. Well, no, that's not the case. A nonprofit means you're not paying back to your stakeholders, right? And so it's not about not making a profit. If you don't make a profit, your business can't survive.
Yeah, we can't be here next year to continue running all these programs to support the community.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a misnomer.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. And I would argue that a nonprofit is just as much of a business and an enterprise than a for-profit business is. Except you have more difficult reporting requirements. You have more, and sometimes more exposure to people looking in and critiquing what you're doing and all that stuff.
And really, if you think about it, it's like running two businesses.
Yeah.
Under one roof, because on the one hand, we're a service provider.
Yep.
But on the other hand, we have to fundraise and we have to support the rest of the business. And so it's really in operating two businesses to achieve one goal.
Absolutely. That
we then have to report on 3 different ways.
I know, it's crazy, man. That's why accountants like us have jobs, I guess.
Absolutely.
But it's so important. Call it, making a profit, not making a profit. But if you're not, reinvesting that money into the growth of the organization, or putting it into retained earnings so that, hey, the next time there's a COVID or the next time there's a natural disaster, that hey, we've got 3 to 6 months of operating cash so that we can at least maintain our staff and live another day while we try to figure out how to navigate it. You can't be expected to operate a business with no reserves or no operating budget.
Absolutely.
So tell me a little bit more about the transition, because I want to talk about leadership and kind of how that transition from your previous role into now being the executive director of an organization with 34 employees and all these different grants and all these different people that you're supporting. Tell us, walk us through kind of the timeline and
So we came to Wilmington. My family and I came to Wilmington in 2016. Following my wife's career. She is the children's minister down at First Baptist.
Awesome.
And so we came to town for that. Had 3 little girls at the time. One was in kindergarten, the other 2 were in preschool. The time that we got here, the timing within the year, there weren't any spaces left in the preschool there at the church. And so I stayed home, was stay-at-home dad for a couple of years with them.
Good for you,
so I had the 2 little ones there at the house. And then during that time, we did get them into preschool starting in that fall. It was a half-day preschool. And so I would take them in the morning, and then I would go to the food bank. And I volunteered at the food bank 3 days a week for a couple of years doing that. And then about the time my youngest daughter was going into kindergarten, so then when she was going to start having full days, okay, well now I can kind of look around. Let's see what is here. Saw a posting on Facebook for a volunteer coordinator position at Warm. Had known about Warm for a couple of years because the first summer that we were here, the student ministry at First Baptist had gotten plugged in with Warm and had done some things, and so I knew about the organization. And I used to serve at a church in Augusta as the minister of missions and faith development. One of the groups that I had there went out and did home repairs and did a lot of the things that Warm is doing. As a matter of fact, I talk about Warm is Men on Missions on steroids. Because they were covering basically 1 county, and we're at 7 now. Even at 3, that was a big deal. And so this kind of work has been in my blood. The idea of missions and service and giving back has always been something that I've wanted to do and felt comfortable with. You tie that to a volunteer coordinator role. Well, that's a lot of what ministry is coordinating people and helping them, put their gifts to use. And so I was like, I can do that, So I came in February of 2018, and then did the volunteer coordinator role through August of that year. And then I was in the midst of a transition then to program development coordinator, and I was going to be focusing on our intern program as well as really identifying more lodging facilities for volunteers when they came into town, having a place for them to serve and kind of getting out into the outer counties and having them closer. We want to try to keep our volunteers within 45 minutes of wherever they're staying, where they're from, if it's a local business or whatever. And so trying to find some places in some of the outer reaches of our service area. And then, so that was August of 2018, and as you remember, Hurricane Florence was in September.
And that was a big one.
So that position didn't last very long. And I transitioned to Hurricane Recovery Coordinator and Community Outreach, and then carried that Program Development Coordinator. And so depending on what meeting I was in was the hat that I was wearing that day, but I really kind of took on that role. Helped to form in New Hanover County, in Pender County, and in Brunswick County the long-term recovery groups, which are community organizations that are involved or made up of nonprofits and churches and individuals and just concerned citizens that come alongside the community really to help to recover. I still serve as the construction chair in each of those 3 main counties that we serve. As we expanded, we joined the LTRGs in the other counties as well, and so continuing to give back that way. Somewhere along the way in 2020, in the midst of COVID, I transitioned to a deputy director role and title. I kind of in the plan that the succession was always going to be that Andy would take over, would be the next one, and then
for that role,
for the executive director role.
Okay.
Yeah. So kind of moving up in that regard. Okay. That was something that the board at the time encouraged JC. We were really into kind of succession planning and kind of getting some things going, and so that was in the works there, and then as we came into other opportunities, in particular in Bladen and Columbus County with the HOP program, which is the Healthy Opportunities Pilot Program, Medicaid funded program. We knew that those 2 counties were coming. With Hurricane Florence money coming from the Office of State Budget Management, we were helping to facilitate money in Onslow County for them, in Brunswick County for the Brunswick County government. As a part of the LTRG in Pender County, we were involved in spending that money. With the Pender County and the Brunswick County relationship, the Office of State Budget Management said, hey, can you help us in Onslow County? And so that pulled us into Onslow. NCHFA, North Carolina Housing and Finance Agency, had been asking for years to get into Duplin County because nobody was really serving that area. So that all of that, again, who has the money makes the rules. So that's where some funding was available to us to go and begin really making a difference in those communities also. Yeah. So that led the expansion. With all of that going on, my role was Director of Strategic Growth. And so kind of thinking through that process of like, what does it look like for WARM to expand and to grow? And then just by way of a title change, I became the Chief Strategy Officer. And then when JC resigned earlier this year, the board named me as interim CEO, and then they went through a national search. And then effectively named me in April of this year as CEO. And I welcomed that process, as weird and as strange as it was to be interviewing for the job that that
you're currently doing.
I think it gives legitimacy to my role and to what I do. And so I spent the first couple months, and I'm still doing it to some regard, and just reconnecting with some of the donors that we've had and some of the supporters that we've had, volunteers and otherwise that have known me but knew me in a different role. And so kind of reaching out from the leadership seat and saying, just want you to know I'm here. I've been here for 6.5 years. Yeah. You've known me, but in a different role, but we're going to be good moving forward. Yeah. And so just kind of giving some reassurance and just reaching out and doing that. And so it's been good. I think, there was a lot of support from the staff. Many of them sent emails or texts to the search committee and just said, hey, we'd really like for Andy to be able to take this next role. Cool. And so
that's awesome.
I was very touched and honored by all of those that I knew about that had reached out and said this is probably the best way to go. And so I'm thankful that the board saw it that way too. Yeah. And realizing I really can't imagine coming into WARM now as a CEO not knowing anything about it. There's just so many different facets to what we do that I've picked up on along the way as I've been, had my fingers in different parts of the organization. So.
Well, so you started as a volunteer coordinator. Is that like quote unquote like an entry level type role or?
Yeah, it really is. It's sort of a step above an admin assistant, or a step above the receptionist or whatever, and so there was at that time there was still a lot of admin work. We were manually inputting volunteer hours and all these things, and so our systems are a little more improved. Since then, we've still got some more improvement that could be done as we continue to grow, but so that was a part of it. But it was very much an entry level position. So I really say that I grew up with the organization.
Absolutely.
Not only advancing in position, but really growing as the organization grew as well.
Yeah, and I think there's so much value to that because you've seen like what it actually takes to get something done and like grown with the organization. So when you're thinking about a decision or when you're trying to figure out what you're like actually taking into account what the impact is all the way down at the bottom of the chain, right?
Yeah.
Whereas pros and cons, I guess, but I would always err on the side of having somebody that actually has an understanding of what happens in the business, right?
Right. I would say that the downside of that too, you flip that and you realize that, and I still catch myself doing this if I overhear a conversation or a question or something that's getting down into the minutia and the details, like I know the answer.
I know.
And so a lot of times I jump in and I give the answer, but I don't need to because I've got a great team. I've got great people to do that. But that's the challenge that I have, and I think anybody that kind of comes up within an organization sort of feels that tug too.
Totally.
So really trying to get myself out of and stay out of the weeds, and really get to sort of that high level, the sort of visionary, that strategic mindset, knowing and trusting. I've got a team of folks that can handle that. They'll still come to me for advice and they'll ask me questions, and I welcome that. Yeah. But I try not to insert myself. I don't belong anymore.
No, exactly. And I think, in my experience and talking with a lot of other people, making that step, like one of the hardest things to do is to get out of the weeds and like and to just delegate and trust that people are doing their job, because you need to be looking at the future and not at the big picture. Yeah. That's the most important thing for the organization.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Would you say that's been one of the more difficult parts of taking on the new role, or what would you?
It is, again, because by nature I'm a helper. So if I see somebody that is struggling or needs an answer or needs a question answered, I want to jump in and give that. But I recognize too that that's not always the best long-term solution for that. If they're always looking to me for the answer or as the crutch, then they're not going to learn the tools and know where to go dig and where to go find. Yeah. So we'll get a phone call that will come in and say, hey, I'm just wondering where I am on the waiting list, or what's my status, or this or that or whatever. You can easily go and ask somebody that question, and they can look it up and figure it out for you. Or you can learn how to look it up and use the systems that we have and get in there and do it.
Exactly.
So taking the time to teach somebody the steps to get the answer, well, it takes longer right now.
Exactly.
It's going to save you that time down the line because you've already done it, so I don't have to keep coming back to you.
Yeah. So have you been through some like leadership training and stuff, or reading books, or how did you kind of develop the skill set to be able to take this on?
Yeah. I would classify myself as a leader kind of always through. I sort of gravitate, towards leadership naturally. Mm-hmm. But there are certainly times when I need to, dive into whatever that professional development webinar or a book is. How do you have a difficult conversation with somebody? How do you have that coaching conversation and that sort of thing? And so it's a constant learning process. If I ever feel like I've made it and there's nothing else to learn, you better put me in the ground, because that means I'm done.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think that from not only a leadership standpoint of how to manage people, how to talk to people, how to kind of lead them through, but also a big piece of a CEO's job in a nonprofit is the fundraising side. Mm-hmm. And leaning into how do you have those conversations, right? How do you lead somebody to the point of wanting to give?
Yeah.
And I remember early on having a conversation with JC when she was considering moving on from Warm, knowing that we had kind of set up this process of me coming behind her, and she said, is this what you want? Like, here we are, it's kind of decision time. Like, do we want to move forward down this road? And I thought long and hard and talked to Karen Pappas here in town, and she and I had some long conversations about, is this the next right move for Andy?
Right, exactly.
To get to this place, and ultimately, is this the next right move for Warm to get us there too? And one of the things I told JC right away was, she said, what are your hesitations? Is what she asked me, and I said, well, number one, I'm not you, I'm not, and she just stopped me and said, good, because it's not about replicating what was before, but it's about bringing the gifts and the skills that I have to the table. And so, but what I meant was, I'm not a fundraiser by nature. Like, that's not a part of who I am. And she may tell you that she wasn't either when she started, but I knew her after she already was, and so that's what I saw. And so it's like, I don't know that I can do that. But she just looked at me and she just said one name. And I thought about it, and I said, oh, that's what that is. This is a gentleman that I go and for the last 2 or 3 years, every year I just go and have a conversation with him when he's in town. Yeah. And I've generally walked away with a check, and I never made a single ask. Yeah. But it's just about sharing the mission and sharing what we do, and then as a donor, he says, I want to support that. Awesome. So it's not about giving support to Andy. It's not about giving support to, me or what I'm doing, but I am representing the organization. This is what the organization does. I want to be a part of that. Yeah. How can I do it? Yeah. When you have a mission like we have, it sells itself.
Yeah, it's hard to say no. I mean, it's hard to say no.
All you got to do is just share the story.
Yep.
Share the mission.
Yeah, exactly.
We have a lot of stories that we can tell, of success stories of different folks along the way, and you just let those roll off your tongue, and folks say, I'm in.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I was thinking back, thinking more like on your story of, starting out, as a coordinator and being very deeply ingrained in the operations and executing, and then through growth strategy. When we were doing, when we did a workshop a couple months ago, Eric and I were here and we were like starting to, try to like process map out, on the whiteboard. And you're like, I think I have something that'll help. And you go in and you bring in this like beautiful swim lane chart that was like exactly what we were trying to do. And I was just like, yes, like this guy gets it for sure. But I mean, now as a CEO, like you shouldn't be spending your time, doing process mapping and stuff like that. I mean, has it been hard to like kind of let go of some of that stuff? Or?
Yeah, it is. There's still a few of those tasks when something will come up, and and I've got a friendly nudge as the team will manage up, and they'll say, Andy, you don't need to do that anymore.
That's awesome.
So
that's awesome.
And I go, I know you're right, but I haven't taken that time yet to train somebody, or to pass that off.
Exactly.
And not because I want to hold on to it necessarily. It's just because there's so many other things going on.
There's a lot.
Oh yeah, I need to let you have this, but let me just fix it this one time, and then then the next time it's one more time.
Exactly.
So it just kind of goes on. But yeah, it was a funny story. Even today, our board chair was asking for our current org chart as we were talking about the folks, and I said, do you want the pretty one that we call the body of warm that's kind of broken out, by department? I said, or do you want the the sort of organizational one? He said, well, let me have both of them. Mm-hmm. I was like, okay. And that body of warm chart has been my baby ever since it came about, like 4 years ago. So, and I just last week I was telling somebody, I need to show you how to do this. I need to pass this off. Like I don't need to be doing that anymore. But again, it's just one of those things that I've just been hanging on to.
Yeah, I know.
Like I just got to get rid of that.
Well, I mean, one of the things I've struggled with is, I don't know, like, delegating can sometimes be hard because it's what I struggle with is like I'm not just like trying to put this work onto you so I can go like kick my feet up and like like go play golf or something like that. It's like truly my time is much more valuable focused on these activities over here and not doing this, But it's still like this, like, I don't know, like moral dilemma for me, because it's just like, I don't want to be like that guy that's just like, oh, you do all the work and I'll go kick back and play golf or something.
Right.
But, I think it's so cool to hear your team says they're like, Andy, like you don't need to be doing this. Like we got you. Like
no, I appreciate that very much. And like I said, it's a great team of folks that have been around for a while, and so they've all done different things too, and recognize that that's not yours anymore. Like we got that. That sort of thing. So, but no, I was thinking about what you were just saying in terms of feeling bad about giving something away, kind of thing. So Patrick Lencioni, business guru guy, he's got one of his most recent series is the 6 Working Geniuses.
Okay.
And so it spells out widget, and so the geniuses are wonder, invention, discernment, galvanizing, enabling, and tenacity. Mm-hmm. And so I'm a WE, which is a wonder enabler.
Okay.
And so wonder is asking the big questions, and so are we seeking the right answer? That's kind of where it starts, and so which that in my mind really lends itself to sort of that CEO world, and they kind of do this elevation thing too of like the wonder is sort of a 30,000 foot type deal, and tenacity is like 5 feet from the ground. You're about ready to land the plane.
Yeah, exactly.
So that kind of thing. The enablement really speaks to my service side and wanting to give back, and so the enablement is, we think about enabling, a lot of times it has a negative connotation, when you think about alcohol or drugs or whatever, kind of that enabling side, but it doesn't have to be. Enabling in this sense is doing what needs to be done on their terms. And so they're asking for help, and so I want to do it the way they want it done because it's their project or their thing or whatever.
Right, exactly.
And so, recognizing all of these geniuses that everybody has. Everybody has 2 geniuses, you have 2 working competencies, and you have 2 frustrations. You can do all of those, and every job is a 6-letter job. So all of those parts are a piece of your job. But if you have to live too long in your competency or your frustration, you get burned out. And so ideally, you're going to do the most of your work up here. And the other beautiful part is when you get a balanced team, somebody who has the gift of tenacity, my chief operations officer, for example, I was telling her the other day, I've done a lot of this work on this thing. We're almost done. I need your tea to finish this.
Yeah,
you know? And that then is a gift that she has. And so what feels like a burden to me is a gift that I'm giving her to be able to do and exercise that genius. You know, so taking that into account is something I've thought about too. And so moving forward, like I want to get more of our team to take that assessment, to know where folks are, to then you start having those conversations. And then that opens up a whole realm of possibility in terms of who's in what meeting. It may not have to do with their job in particular, but because of their genius, they're going to bring something to it that somebody else wouldn't.
Right.
You know, so then you really start thinking about team dynamics too as you look at all that.
Yeah, no, that's a really good perspective. And one of the business coaches I work with, like he's been kind of helping me through this, but he asked me a question. He's like, Chris, so you know, if you're afraid to delegate something to someone, like what does that say about that person? Are you questioning their capability, their competency? And I'm like, no, they're great. Well, he's like, well, let them do it. And I'm, you know, it's just like one of those things where it's just like, of course. You know, because if I was on the other side and I wasn't getting like constructive feedback on how to do things better, on how to be better, on how to grow and taking on like challenging assignments, I'd be frustrated as an employee, right? But for some reason, you know, on the flip side, it's like you want to protect your people, or at least, I don't say you. I mean, you know, in my experience, I want to protect my people and keep them happy and all that. But you know, sometimes that can be like contradictory almost. I don't know.
It's like there's a word for it, and I can't think of what it is, but where you will give yourself grace. If you make an error or whatever, well, I didn't mean X, Y, and Z, or this is going on in my life, whatever. I need that and grace. But for everybody else, you like immediately cast blame. You know, it's their fault. It's my circumstances. Yeah. You know, and it doesn't flip the other way. Yeah. You got to keep that in mind too.
So, what's the comparability to leadership being a stay-at-home dad to leadership being the CEO of a big organization?
Oh man, that's a great question. I think so. You probably have heard that phrase, you know, when you're around your kids or whatever. So they say the days are long, but the years are short.
Yes.
And there have been so many days of being here, and I look down and I think, holy cow, it's lunchtime already, or holy cow, it's 5 o'clock already. You know? So something flips in the space-time continuum. That as the leader, you're like your days are shrinking.
Yeah,
you know? Exactly. So the days seem super short just because there's so much there. You know, when the day is over, you still have a lot of to-do list left.
I know. Oh my gosh.
But it's, you know, so many things and just in such a wide variety. I used to say that if I could focus on one thing, I'd be dangerous. Mm-hmm. This has been through multiple levels of career. If I could focus on one thing, I'd be dangerous. But I thought about that more and more, and I realized about myself, if I only got to focus on one thing, I'd go crazy.
Yeah.
You know, so a role like this where there is so many different things going on, so many different conversations, so many different areas that need my focus and attention, I love it. I love it. You know, it can thrive in the difference of what that is. Now, sometimes there's a struggle to bounce back and forth between one and the other.
For sure.
And you have to have that time to really sit down and focus. Like, for example, I'm preaching this Sunday at First Baptist Mount Olive, and tomorrow I'm going to ECU to talk to them about WARM, and then the rest of the week I'll be in Atlanta at a conference.
Oh my gosh.
So tonight and tomorrow and whatever else I could try to get this sermon together.
Oh my God.
But it's all these different things, you know. So
I didn't know you were a preacher. Like, tell me more about that. Is that something you do regularly, or?
No, it's really not. I like to when I'd have the opportunity, but I decided a long time ago, or I figured out about myself a long time ago that I don't want to preach every Sunday, but I do like to teach. And so having the opportunity to do some different things are great fun for me. I just finished up a series at First Baptist. I was teaching adults for the last 4 weeks in Sunday school.
Cool.
I teach on a regular basis 4th and 5th graders in Sunday school, and occasionally get the opportunity to preach in different places. This is a relationship that was born out of WARM. Their church actually partially funded a rebuild that we did in Duplin County, and so I've just continued a relationship with the pastor there. He's going on extended medical leave, and he's reached out to several people to come and fill the pulpit at different times, and Sunday's my day. So
unbelievable.
I've known about it for at least 2 months now. And here is the week of. I just kept thinking, oh, that's down the road.
Yeah.
But
a little procrastination isn't a bad thing.
Yeah.
The days are short.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, everybody fears public speaking, right? That they say like one of the, biggest fears of anybody. But so public speaking is one thing, but then doing it in a church where you've got all these people like looking up to you, you're like, oh man, it's got to have a little level of stress, I'd imagine.
Yeah, so at some point I grew out of that fear. I mean, there's a little bit of nervousness still. We were even talking about, coming in today, always a little bit of nervousness, but that's that healthy stress.
Yeah.
You've got to have some of that, and that's what drives you to do better and be better. Yep. But whether it's speaking to a youth group of 50 to 75, if it's the church, if it's the folks at the gala or whatever, being up in front of a crowd, I don't seek the spotlight, but I don't run away from it either.
Yeah.
To have the opportunity again to teach and to share and to know what I know, to share the story of Warm or to share the story of Christ, whatever it may be. Something I'm passionate about, something that I can share and have that ability to. I can zone in. They'll Kevin Costner, clear the mechanism.
Yeah.
Focus in on one person, 3 people around the room, whatever. It doesn't matter if there's 10,000 in there. You can find your spots, and it's like you're preaching to a small few people. Yeah.
That's really interesting. Oh my gosh. So yeah, I mean, so what else do you? You preach. You're the CEO of Warm. You're a dad of 3 kids.
4 now. Yeah.
4?
So we were 3 when we got here.
Holy smokes!
And so our son was born in just before the pandemic. Yeah.
So he's 4-ish.
He's 5. He's 2019, June 2019.
Oh my gosh. So what are the ages now? 5.
So they are. I gotta think, because all the girls' birthdays are in October, and 2 of them have had theirs now, and so 15, 12, and 11.
Mm-hmm.
So and then on the
27th,
the other one will bump up, and then Ollie's 5.
Yeah. Amazing. How does he like having 3 big sisters?
Oh, he loves it. He loves it. They love it most of the time, but with this being birthday season, when all the crowds are around it, sometimes they're like, Ollie, can you just go away, buddy? Like, leave us alone.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
But no, he has a good time with all of them, and their friends are great. They're great with him. There's a lot of love. So,
yeah. How do you balance when you get home? Are you able to kind of like switch into dad mode, or are you still kind of like thinking about work? Like, how do you manage that transition? Because it's not easy to do.
I do a pretty decent job, I think, of really being able to switch it off. When I leave, I get to go home and be dad. There are times when the job calls for evening activities. Like just last Thursday, we had a donor appreciation event over at the new place. And so that kept me out a little bit later. But then, when I get home, I do a pretty good job of flipping it off. The pandemic was difficult because we were all working at home, and so there's almost no off switch. So you're working all day, you're doing the family thing, and you kind of go back to it at night before you sort of crash into bed.
Yeah.
It took a little bit of time to unwind from that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that having that experience too helped me realize the necessity of that and wanting to pull away from that. And so really finding that balance, that work-life balance of when you go home, you're done.
It's time to be home. Yep.
And I haven't gone so far as to turn the notifications off on my phone, but I don't check my work email unless I need to.
Yeah, good for you. My wife and I were joking that like we're gonna just go back to having non-smartphones, like little.
That's right.
Just because for us, and sometimes it's not even like the work thing, but it's just like it's so hard. It's such a double-edged sword because it's so nice, like flow of information, being able to communicate, being able to FaceTime with your family and all this stuff. But And on the flip side, it's like it's so easy to get distracted, and it's so hard to just turn it off. And I don't know. I think that we learned a lot. I think that a lot of people learned a lot about themselves, like during COVID. And I think that one of the positives of that whole thing was like, what am I doing with my time and my life and all of this, you know? And like being present in the moment. And I mean, how cool is it that you're able to stay at home and be a dad for a couple years? That's amazing.
You know, and it was like I said, you know, it was tough in the moment, but I look back on that now, you know, and I think that I wouldn't have the kind of relationship that I have with my girls if I didn't have that time with them to be, you know, being intentional and being at home. And I love when the Facebook pictures pop up and the Google memories and whatever, and you see, you know, the day for, you know, Pirate Day when we went to the, you know, Krispy Kreme, we're all dressed up as, you know, pirates to get our free donut.
It's amazing.
You know, that sort of stuff pops up. I'm like, I can't, you know, you can't make that up, and you can't do that now.
No.
You know, so
exactly.
when you're plugged in and doing
Pirate Day.
Yeah.
It is cool. Like that's like, you know, something that just like popped into your mind is something that you remember. Yeah. So our son is 14 months old now, and so, you know, now he's like walking, like running, babbling, and like it's cool. Like I come home from work and he's like excited to see me now.
Yeah.
So it's like there's actually like a person there, and like and so like I'm starting to, you know, try to be like, I think that's probably one of the things I'm working on the most. Like obviously like the business and all of that is one thing, but like just the time, you know, that's the ultimate currency, right?
Yeah.
Like money comes and goes, but time.
That's right.
You only get less of it every. It's kind of a pessimistic way to look at it, but I mean it's just the reality, man.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
Yeah.
So what you know, in like 3 years from now, like if we were to talk again in 3 years and be like, Warm is now doing this, and this, what's that picture of success look like?
Oh man, the dream a little bit. We will have all of our systems figured out and rocking and rolling, from accounting to scheduling to program management and all those things that we're kind of limping along with now. All that'll be fixed. You know, all of our processes will be jam up. You know, because we're putting serious focus on how we do what we do and the ability to do it better. And then once those things are really put into place, you know, then we'll be able to strengthen our programming within the footprint that we are. And so we have a couple of programs that are New Hanover centric or just a little bit outside, and I'd like to see those grow into the rest of the market as well, to be able to do that, you know. And then once all those things happen, you know, which the beginning of 3 years and kind of a little bit beyond, you know, that's when we might think about geographic expansion again, you know, kind of what does that look like, and how do you, you know, begin to have those relationships just outside of the service area, so that when you're ready to make that move, you've already got a foothold in those places. You know, one of the we've actually just finished up our strategic planning process, and have thought a lot over the course of this year, like what does that legacy begin to be for Andy as a leader of Warm. And I really have settled on, after going through multiple iterations on my whiteboard and taking pictures of this and taking this piece and that piece and kind of putting things together, settled in on 3 words: stabilize, strengthen, and grow. And so recognizing that as an organization with personnel changes and other program and process changes, we got some things that we need to stabilize. And then as a way to strengthen that, whether it be through you know, right-sizing the staff, bringing on folks to do, you know, a little bit different things, you know, strengthening this program here and there, but making that strengthen piece be next. And when we've done those 2 things, then we're ready to grow. And growth doesn't necessarily mean geographic. You know, it could mean filling in the footprint that we're in now and moving forward.
That's amazing, man. Well, it all makes perfect sense to me. It's like you guys have had this incredible growth over the past couple years, and it's like, all right, let's get our infrastructure set. Let's become more efficient, more effective, and then we'll be able to go out and really and take advantage of opportunity and growth. So awesome, man. Well, in the spirit of the days and time going quick, that was already like 50 some minutes. So I think that's about our time. But thank you very much for sharing your story, for the work you do. And I mean, I didn't know a lot of that stuff about you, and you're just a great role model to so many people out there. And I hope that people listen and look at you and see, hey, here's a way to be a good human and give back to society. So
thanks, Chris. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, man. Awesome. Thanks.
Enjoyed it.